Hello, everybody. This is Ian Lamont. I am the author of Lean Media, and today I'm going to be talking about the Lean Media framework and some of the basic ideas that are behind it. So, Lean Media is for people who create informational and entertainment media. That could be a film, could be a video, book, any other type of publication, music, video games, a news website or a news publication, and also things like advertising. That might be the creative team that's working on advertisement or content marketing. They can all use Lean Media to make great media. It's also for people who work in the business of media, and that could be the CEO of a media company, regardless of whether they're involved in the creative side. The person who's running the business, they can use Lean Media as well, the framework. And then finally, people who are founding creative media ventures. So they might be starting a new blog, a new video channel, creating uh, a new script for a TV show or for a movie or something like that. They can use Lean Media as well. And a very basic example is this is one of the websites that I operate. It's actually a YouTube channel for a series of guidebooks that I created. And the YouTube channel and also the books themselves, I use the Lean Media framework to make them better. And I'll describe how the framework works over the next 10 minutes or so. So Lean Media is very useful for people who create media, but I have to admit, it's not for everybody. The creative person who has their own vision for how to create media doesn't want to listen to anybody else on how to do it. They just know something in their heart. They want to pursue it. Lean Media won't work for them. And you'll see why as I get into the different principles of Lean Media later on. The folks who already have great success on their own and they have a formula or they have a team or they have a process that works for them. So if it's really working for them, there's no reason for them to turn to Lean Media. Although if things maybe start to go south for them, they can also turn to Lean Media to maybe get some of that magic back. And then finally, the media company that doesn't want to let the creative team have control over the product, or they want to really limit that control. And you'd be surprised to learn that a lot of companies, particularly large media companies, the business team really controls the output, that is the product, whatever media is being created. Could be the game, could be the website, could be the book. And they don't really let the people who are actually creating the work have much say in how it's developed because they think that their rules must be followed in order to create something that succeeds. So if your company works that way, Lean Media is probably not for you, but you might want to learn about it anyway, so keep on watching. It's important to know that Lean Media is already being used in the industry, including by people and creators who may not even know that they're using it. But the principles are well established. They've been around for a long time. And in the book, I describe how some creators use these principles to make great media, even if they don't know the phrase lean media. And you can see a list of the examples on the left. All of them are mentioned to some degree in the book. And comedians like Amy Schumer, it's a classic example. The most successful comedians, they all start the same way. They'll come up with jokes, they'll come up with a gag, they'll come up with a script or something, and then they'll perform it in front of audiences, and they'll listen to the feedback, and they'll really hone their gags and their bits until it's nearly flawless by the time that they get to the end of their tour. And Amy Schumer is no different than Jerry Seinfeld or other successful comedians over the years who have basically really listened to their audiences and focused on their the creative output and how audiences interact with it to make great media. Minecraft is another example. This video game was developed by a very small team, listening closely to feedback, and not just the quantitative feedback, but also qualitative feedback, actually watching how people use the game in order to hone it and to make it better. And then this was surprising, but as I was doing my research, I found out that Marvel Studios, they really do use some lean media techniques to make their movies that are so successful, even though they're working in Hollywood. But they use things like focus groups, test reels, and all kinds of techniques that are kind of part of the lean media playbook to make successful movies. And the goal of lean media, at the end of the day, is to make better media. And when I say better media, it just means media that's not only great, but it resonates with audiences. And also it can support growth and revenue in the future. Although I have to say, for some media creators, revenue is not that important. They want to get something out there that resonates with audiences. They're not so concerned about whether it makes money. So there are different types of media creators out there. Some are more focused on actually making a successful product that sells seats or sells tickets or sells copies. Others are just more focused on creating great media. They're not so focused on what the bottom line will be in terms of revenue and profit. So lean media has three principles. The first one is to eliminate waste. And this comes from classic lean frameworks from other industries. So lean startup, the lean media is heavily influenced by that, as well as the lean production. And eliminating waste is at the heart of all lean frameworks, and lean media is no different. And basically, if you have a team that's too big, and let's say that, what I like to say is that, if you have a group of people creating media, whether it's a video or music or a film or a book or whatever, doubling the number of people in a team will not make it twice as good. In fact, what starts to happen is team members start stepping on each other. There's a question over who has what responsibility. It really slows things down. So you actually want to reduce the size of the team, so the team is just big enough to make something great. Unnecessary approvals, I think, are the bane of media creators. You have to show a demo version or a manuscript to people who aren't really involved in the creative process to get their sign off. And often these are stakeholders somewhere, either within the business team. Maybe they could be investors, or they could be partners, and they need to give some sort of approval. And the problem with this is that the people giving the approval, they may not understand the audiences or the creative core the same way that the people who are making the media do. And sometimes it's because of cultural reasons. The company, they've always operated this way. They have to let these non-creative stakeholders have some sort of say in it. But in lean media, the idea is to reduce these types of approvals, to eliminate waste and extra non-necessary approvals that might even steer the team in the wrong direction. Unnecessary meetings are another thing that needs to be gotten rid of in a lean media team. And then also insisting on things being perfect without really understanding whether or not people will care. And it's very tempting, especially now with all these great digital tools to create media, that you want to make it super perfect. And you'll spend hours and hours and hours working on like a 10-second sequence at the end of your video. And do people really care about it that much? I mean, obviously you want it to look good and you want people to feel good after watching it, but getting too focused on tiny little details and being perfect in that sense, I think, can be actually quite harmful, and it counts as waste in the lean media framework. Second principle is understanding audiences. Now, a lot of media companies these days, when they try to understand audiences, they'll look at the data, the quantitative data, for instance, demographic data about who's watching a particular video or an advertisement, or how many times people are clicking on something or engaging with it, or which market is performing better than some other market. And that type of data can be very helpful to understanding audiences, but it's not just the quantitative data, it's also the qualitative feedback that you need to get during the production, not after the thing is released, but actually while you're creating it. You need to show it to people and get their feedback. Quantitative feedback could be data like this, like you see on the screen, or it could be qualitative feedback. And you could actually talk with people after they've seen it, send them a survey, ask them questions. What did you think about it? How does it make you feel? Try to understand how audiences feel. You can also do things like see how audiences react during practice or a demonstration or performance. And in the book, I have a couple examples of this. One of them is The Simpsons, the famous TV show. When that got started, actually the creators paid a lot of close attention to the way that in-studio audiences were laughing at gags. And this was used to validate some of the ideas that they were testing out. And one thing that's important to keep in mind, in terms of understanding audiences, feedback will inform the creative team. It won't override them. So you're not just like throwing something out to the mob and the mob, everyone says yes or they roar no, and you're just following exactly what they say. You're listening to what they say. But it's up to the creative team to really take that feedback and do something with it. And in some cases, the creative team may decide, well, even though the people, they're not reacting to it well, I think this can actually make for a great product, and we can continue to improve it. So it's not just handing over the reins to the mob. It's actually listening to what they have to say, and looking for pieces of information that can help you as a creator improve the work that you're making and hopefully create something that will resonate better with audiences at the end of the day. So for audience feedback, it's interesting. Chubby media is my phrase that I use in the book for traditional media. And the way that it usually works is you'll have the creative team or the creator will have an idea, and then they'll create this thing, and they'll do it in secret. They'll be locked in their studios or in their conference rooms or in their offices or behind their keyboard working on this thing, and then they'll launch it, and they won't know feedback until after the launch. That is, they may be spending 6 months or a year or even longer working on this thing, but until they launch it, they won't even know whether or not how it's going to work out. And this can be incredibly wasteful and lead to failures that are unnecessary. And what lean media does is it inserts feedback cycles into the production process. So it can be as early as the idea coming out. So let's say it's a team working on a script for a new sitcom. They might be able to kind of read that in front of a test audience, or give a copy to some potential test audiences and see what they think about it, or do just a simple read through or whatever. Then they actually start to prototype it. That is, you start to shoot things, you start to have demo versions of it, and then you give your test audiences copies of it, let them experience it. And then you could either try to gather quantitative feedback, so give them a survey to fill out, or qualitative feedback, just talk to them and see what they think. And then after the launch, and whether it's a hard launch like a movie, so the movie will never be improved after it launches. But for other types of media productions, like a serial TV show or a book, where you might do a second edition later on, you can use feedback after that first launch to improve it later on. And I should also say that there's variations of the lean media feedback cycle, and sometimes you may get feedback after the idea and after the prototype, but not after the launch. Or at other times, you might not get any feedback after the idea, but after you start to prototype, you get feedback from audiences, and then after the launch, you get feedback too. So, for instance, The Simpsons, at the very beginning, they did not get feedback after the idea. So Matt Groening and the other creators at Fox who made the early ideas about The Simpsons, they didn't get feedback from audiences at that stage. But when they started to prototype it, and that was when The Simpsons was running as short clips between another TV show called The Tracy Ullman Show, that's when they started to get feedback from test audiences and started to improve and validate based on that feedback. So here's another example. Led Zeppelin, I talk about this extensively in the book, but Led Zeppelin was a huge rock supergroup from the 1970s. People often know it for the song Stairway to Heaven, but when they were just getting started, and this was in 1968, I found this to be fascinating as I was reading about it. And of course, they didn't know anything about lean media, but what they did do is they had their creative idea came out. That's when they had the first practice. They got some songs together. Some were songs that they performed with other bands. Some were songs that they made up. And right away, they went on a Scandinavian tour in the fall of 1968. And they used feedback from the tour, from audiences, to determine what songs are working, what songs aren't working. So, like if the audience is grooving along to a song, or they're rocking their heads, or they want to come back to the hotel after the show and continue the party, that was a good sign to them that they were doing something right. And conversely, if like the audience looked bored or they weren't getting into it, that was a sign to them that maybe that arrangement wasn't working out so well. And what they did is they almost immediately went into the recording studio. This was just the band and a couple people on the management team, just to kind of help to set it up. But the management team stepped back. Their manager stepped back. It was basically the band and the recording engineers working on this music, and the band knew about the feedback from the tour, and that's actually how Led Zeppelin 1 was created. They didn't have record label people telling them what to do, or their manager insisting on approvals or anything like that. It was basically the band who had this vision based on the feedback and their early practice sessions. That's how they made Led Zeppelin 1. Led Zeppelin 2 was very similar. They could actually test out some of their songs on the road as they were touring before the album was recorded, and so on. Later on, they didn't use the lean media techniques, but early in their career, they did. And I have to say that this almost certainly resulted in them achieving such a high degree of success very early in their career. And finally, the last principle for lean media is focusing creativity. So we've already talked about reducing waste and understanding audiences. At the end of the day, the team needs to listen to that feedback. They need to work within the small constraints of their team, their lean team, to really focus their creativity. And that's what Led Zeppelin did early on in their career. It was just them. They understood what their audiences wanted, and they were able to really focus their creativity and create some great albums early in their career. So there are tools that you can use to create lean media. One of them, you can download it on the website totally for free. It's called the Lean Media Project Planner, and it looks like this. And basically, this is a tool that is intended to help creators really start to plan out how they want to prototype their media work, the teams they want working on it, because the teams will change from as the work keeps on going along. And then also some how they can gather feedback as they go through the different prototype stages. So in the book, I just actually have two versions of the project planner that are already filled out, 2 or 3 versions, including one for the film Napoleon Dynamite, independent film. The producers of this film and the writers and the actors, they really did use lean media techniques to get this thing out there, to prototype it, and they were listening to that feedback, and they eventually created something that was very successful within the indie film scene. For more information on lean media, go to leanmedia.org. Besides having the book, you can order the book. There's also the Lean Media Project Planner. I also have lots of videos that you can use that talk about lean media techniques and blog posts and whatnot. So thank you very much for watching this presentation. Be sure to check out the videos and to check out the website, and I hope to see you soon.